Hey guys, so we're moving on to the next unit in Algebra 1, and that's Unit 2, and it's all about solving one-step equations. So I'm first going to show you how to solve one-step equations by either adding or subtracting. Um, there's a couple of instructions at the top here that say to solve an equation means to get the variable by itself, and you're finding the values that make the equation true, so that make it work. And in order to get the variable by itself, you first look at what's being done, with the number to the variable, and then you do the opposite. So in other words, the two things that I remember when it comes to solving, or that I tell students about when it comes to solving one-step equations, is first you ask yourself what's happening to x. So what's happening to the variable in the equation? Is it being added? Is it being subtracted? Is it being multiplied? Or is it being divided? And then once you figure out what's happening, you're going to do the opposite. So the opposite of adding is subtracting, okay? And the same thing, the opposite of subtracting is adding. So let's look at the examples. Notice that in these notes it says in this column you're going to need to subtract. So in that yellow column we're going to be subtracting. So let's do that with the column. So we have 9 equals x plus 7. So what's happening to x is being added by 7. So we're going to do the opposite and we're going to subtract to both sides. And we're going to say that's going to be part of our rules to remember when we're solving one-step equations. You're always going to do it to both sides of the equation. So if you want to set up yourself by putting a line down the center of your equation or down where the equal to is, then that will help you out. So if I subtract 7 from both sides, I now got rid of it on this side, and I have x equals 9 minus 7 is 2. There's your answer there. Notice that in the other column that we have in this column, you're going to need to add. So these are going to be all problems where you're going to need to add. So let's try solving this one. In this one, we have w minus 4 is equal to 8. So what is happening to w? It's being subtracted by 4. So we're going to do the opposite, and we're going to add 4 to both sides. Again, you can draw a line down where the equal to sign is to help you out here. The 4's are gone on that side, and you get w equals 8 plus 4 is 12. And there's our final answer. Okay? So let's go back to the first column where we're going to have to subtract, and notice that we're going to have to do it with decimals this time. And feel free to use a calculator if you have it on hand, because you might want it when it comes to decimals, okay? And when it comes to fractions. So in this one, we have w plus 2.6 is equal to 8.13. So since it's being added by 2.6, we're going to subtract 2.6 from both sides. So you have w equals, and then 8.13 minus 2.6 comes out to be 5.53, and that would be our final answer there. Let's look at the adding column. We have v minus 6.81 is equal to 3.6. So v is being subtracted by 6.81. So instead of subtracting it, we are going to do the opposite, and we are going to add it to both sides. So we have v equals 3.6 plus 6.81. And that comes out to be 10.41. Okay? Next up, we're going to do the adding and subtracting with integers, okay? So again, use the calculator because you're going to see negative numbers here. So you have 5 plus v is equal to negative 8. Since v is being added by 5, we're going to do the opposite, and we're going to subtract by 5 onto both sides. When we do so, we get v by itself, and then careful, this is negative 8 minus 5. And if I plug that into the calculator, I will get negative 13. They are the same signs, so you add the two numbers and keep the sign. In the adding column, notice we have negative 2 equals negative 4 plus y. Now, what is happening to y? Y is being added by a negative 4. But in order to get rid of the negative 4, because it is negative, we are going to have to add 4 to both sides. And the reason we have to add 4 is because the 4 is negative, so we have to make it positive in order to clear it. Okay, so then you're left with y equals negative 2 plus 4. They're opposite signs, so you subtract the two numbers and you get 2, and you keep the sign of the bigger number. And the bigger number here is 4, so my answer is positive 2. Then the last types of one-step problems that you're going to run into are with fractions, okay? So again, you can use a calculator for this when you punch in the fractions, but remember that fractions are division symbols, okay? Also, if you are not using the calculator for this, remember when you're doing fractions, you do have to find what is called a common denominator in order to be able to add and subtract fractions, okay? So let's look at this first example. It says W plus 3/5 is equal to 1/5. Since it's being added by 3/5, I'm going to do the opposite and subtract both sides by 3/5, and I'm going to put it over to the right here. So then I am left with W equals 1/2 minus 3/5. Now, what I mean by a common denominator is you take the two bottom numbers, so you've got the two bottom numbers are 5 and 2. You multiply those, and that it ends up being your common denominator. So 5 times 2 is 10. So I'm going to make my bottom 10, okay? And then what I have to do is I have to multiply the top, or the numerator, by the number that makes the bottom 10. So I had to multiply 2 by 5 to be 10. So I'm going to multiply 1 by 5, and I get 5. And then I had to multiply 5 by 2 to get 10. So I'm going to multiply the top by 2, and 3 times 2 is 6. Now I can actually subtract my fractions. So 5 minus 6 is negative 1/10 as my final answer. Okay, let's see that again in the adding column. So you have y minus 7/8 is equal to negative 1/2. Or y is being subtracted, so instead I'm going to add 7/8 to both sides, and I'm going to put it over to the right here so that I can see it better. Okay, so then I have y equals. So this one, our common denominator, it happens to be 8 here because I can make this 2 become 8 by multiplying by 4. So I'm going to make my common denominator 8 here, and it's a negative up top. And then 1 times 4 is 4, so we've got negative 4/8 plus 7/8. And when you do that, negative 4 plus 7 is 3/8 as a final answer. Okay, so again, use a calculator if you need it for these fractions because fractions can be tricky. But if you're not using a calculator, make sure you remember to do common denominator and then add and subtract. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.